Grim Dawn was a bit of an anomaly for me when I first played it in 2022. It overwrote something that I had felt had just been kind of plain and obvious for my own taste in gaming for years at that point. I don't really fall in love with gameplay games, or to be more specific, I had never really returned to a game over and over again just for the gameplay. It was usually some narrative or exploratory provocation that made me come back. I love Halo to death and could and probably will someday defend its honor as having great gameplay, but what I really love is this universe. I love the brutalist design of the Forerunner architecture, the origins of the Covenant, and just the extensive lore and mythos. Halo without all that is just something I really like, not something I love. Even a game like Doom Eternal that has excellent gameplay. I've argued in the past that it is the best pure shooting game I've ever played. The thing is that I love the gameplay in the way that it enhances the narrative framing as an unstoppable entity on a single-minded mission to kill demons and to keep killing demons until hell is empty. Even though many people could play Doom Eternal over and over again and find joy in perfecting the gameplay loop, I personally have little desire to do so. I can say surely that the gameplay is designed to be nearly perfect in my eyes, but still admit that given the choice, I think I'd rather just continue on to the next story game I wanted to play. Grim Dawn then appeared in my life and threw my whole understanding of myself out of balance, because while there is extensive history to the world of Cairn, I frankly don't find much to latch onto. Then I look at these skill trees and I see potential everywhere, synergies that need to be capitalized on. So that is what I want to yap about today. How I discovered I really like synergizing game systems into unique experiences. This has led me to 3 of my favorite games of the last few years, and has informed what kind of stuff I'll be looking for in the future. For those of you uninitiated, and for my poor parents who get lost in all the terminology, Grim Dawn is an action role-playing game, or ARPG for short. A game typically played from a top-down isometric perspective where the primary form of role-playing is from the construction of your fighting style and your general vibe. There is very light role-playing in terms of how your character acts. Grim Dawn does have dialogue options, but they're mostly just flavor text that gets you to the same character interactions anyway, so it's not the focus of the game. It may seem like this is the gameplay of Grim Dawn, and that's not wrong. Most of the game is actually spent here, cutting, exploding, and spell-slinging your way through hordes of enemies. However, unless you're fighting one of the harder bosses that will require some more complex game knowledge, this part more or less plays itself if you play the actual game correctly. The real game part of Grim Dawn is spent here in the skill trees, devotion pages, and item descriptions as you assemble a build that synergizes well and maximizes damage. All that screen shaking and effect layering chaos that constitutes the bulk of the game time is really just the reward center for decisions you make during the construction phase of the game. So let me walk you through a build I have and how these things can come together. My favorite individual class in the game is a cultist. It's one of those things where I constantly tell myself, okay, let's play something other than a cultist, but end up finding myself back playing a Dreeg's Evil Eye build or using some Bloody Pox to level. One skill that has always intrigued me was the class's most elusive skill, Doombolt. It's an awesome red lightning bolt, and I've never really had the chance to use it, so I thought I would set out in an effort to actually craft a build around Doombolt. What Doombolt is, at its core, is a nuke skill, meaning it is cast and then has a long cooldown, or at least a relatively long cooldown in terms of the actual combat portion of the game. So from the start, this is a bad skill to use as a main skill, and you will need some sort of assistance to be a compatible part of the build. We will need to either shorten the cooldown or have another skill to complement it when it's on cooldown. My initial thought was to go the cooldown route and try and pair together gear that would allow me to cast Doombolt as fast as possible. I found this to be quite difficult, as I could only find this revolver that gave me basically half a second of time off, and a caster offhand that did about the same thing. Then I found some gloves that could reduce things by another full second, but this left me 2 more seconds of downtime that would need to be filled by another skill, and I wasn't sure I liked the options I had. I could do basic attacks, but wasn't entirely sold on doing that because I was just wielding one pistol because I had the offhand. I'd be leaving damage on the cutting room floor for the sake of 2 seconds of downtime. Then I found an item that completely changed my mind on where I wanted to take this build. The item Wrath of Tenebris dropped into my lap and I saw the vision. This item gives a bonus skill to Doombolt, which is good, and another skill called Eye of Reckoning. That skill is available in the Oathkeeper skill tree, Grim Dawn's version of a paladin. This is where we get to Grim Dawn's best feature, and honestly the main reason I play it over other ARPGs out there. In Grim Dawn you can dual class. So creating a class that is an Occultist Oathkeeper hybrid, I can unlock a new class distinction called the Sentinel. Each class combination has its own unique name. There are 9 classes with a 10th on the way to mix and match. So with this class combination and unique weapon drop, I'm able to create my final build of Dr. Doom. A spinning wheel of destruction that calls down jagged bolts of pure chaos down on their enemies. This build is about maximizing chaos damage. Since Eye of Reckoning initially does physical and fire damage, we need to convert that, which is done by our weapon Wrath of Tenebris. This weapon actually does quite a bit for the build, as it adds flat damage that is then multiplied by the total percent damage, it adds a percent of weapon damage to Doombolt and Eye of Reckoning, and lowers the energy cost for Doombolt. It also converts 13% of all damage done back into health for my character to help counteract incoming damage. Our weapon may be the beating heart of the build, but it doesn't make it whole. I also found these gloves that added even more weapon damage to Doombolt, which was nice, but the real kicker was that it converted all the vitality damage of Doombolt into chaos damage. Then I also had this amulet that added an extra minus 10% chaos resistance to my debuff skill Curse of Frailty. There are most certainly more items that would gel with what I've got going on here. I just haven't managed to find them yet. Luckily, there are even more ways to make this build stronger, and that is through the devotion page. The devotion page is just another layer of depth that the game puts in to expand your ability to maximize damage or cover up holes in your defenses. There are some constellations that improve general things, like the Kraken, that will enhance damage through raw power and added attack speed as long as you use a two-handed weapon. There are also more defensive constellations like Lotus and Eel that I've taken for some various defensive buffs, but the real treasure comes from these constellations that have a pink star around them. These pink stars are additional abilities, but not like the ones you get from your skill tree. These are socketed onto skills and will auto-activate on certain conditions, like dropping below a health threshold or simply a percent chance to activate on hit. The former being represented by the tortoise, the ability gained by speccing into this constellation activates when you drop below 50% health and causes you to gain a damage absorbing bubble. On the other side of things, this build uses Flame Torrent from the Fiend constellation to add extra damage to groups around the spinning ball of death that is this build. There are also debuffs like Eldritch Fire, which stack with my debuff Curse of Frailty skill, allowing it to remove even more of the enemy's chaos damage resistances. So if we look at the actual combat portion of the game, I'll walk up to a group of enemies, cast Curse of Frailty, which will debuff them, with that debuff being enhanced by Eldritch Fire and Razim's Gem Amulet. Then I'll find the strongest enemy I can currently see and cast Doombolt on them, and that will do a large burst of chaos damage. Then, while that is on cooldown, I'll use Eye of Reckoning to slice through whatever is left on the battlefield, with each hit having a chance to proc Hungering Void, a buff that I have a 33% chance to activate on each hit, and Eldritch Fire that has a 25% chance to proc on each hit. With a build like this designed to hit a lot, these things are almost always active in some way. This isn't even covering the components on each piece of gear, or the relic I had to craft, or the augments to be gained via doing quests to gain the trust of many of the factions of the game. There is so much depth here to play with that it can feel like dumping out a 1,000 piece puzzle and just staring at the various shapes and getting overwhelmed. Yet, over time, as you put the pieces together to reveal the whole of the image, it can bring along with it great satisfaction. It is all the planning that makes this part of the game satisfying. as functionally all I'm doing to clear an entire screen is press 1 on a group of enemies, press 3 on the biggest of them, then hold right click until I can press 3 again on repeat. Like I said, unless you're fighting one of the harder bosses in the game, or maybe pushing Shattered Realms into higher tiers, there's not too much to the gameplay that requires in-depth knowledge and proper positioning. The real game of Grim Dawn is the construction phase, planning out a general playstyle and a vibe for your character, and finding an assortment of gear and constellations to synergize with the class selections. Those of you who have played Grim Dawn know that besides Path of Exile, there's basically no match in terms of build variety that can be created. ARPGs are best when they act as a giant Lego box, filled with a wide selection of unique blocks that can be mixed and matched to create something truly special to each player. My eyes have been opened to a whole new genre of gaming that I didn't even know I liked. Torchlight 2, Titan Quest, Diablo, Path of Exile, Last Epoch, these are all games that I can play and understand immediately what the fun part is. I still cling to Grim Dawn due to its genius dual classing system, one that the developers took from their spiritual predecessor Titan Quest and made it even more fun to tinker with. Also, it's just a primarily offline game, so I don't need to worry about intrusive microtransactions being shoved in my face or having to play more often due to the season ending or a special event. I can easily pick up and put down Grim Dawn as I please, and it's led me to playing over 500 hours of the damn thing over the past few years. Listen, I love Grim Dawn, but I can totally understand if someone looks at this skill tree, here's you get a second one, plus a large constellation tree, and items that look like this, and say, alright, that is way too much fucking reading for me, big dog, and check out of the genre entirely. I would argue there are more beginner-friendly ARPGs like Torchlight 2 and Diablo 4, but hey, not every genre is for everyone. I'm still personally trying to carve a path into the character action game genre. Haven't really tried that hard, to be honest, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. However, if you want to feel the joy of synergy in a way that is more passive, there is a game that scratches that same itch. Risk of Rain 2 is an incredible game that, similarly to Grim Dawn, utterly shattered my understanding of my tastes. I like roguelikes, but I never loved them. Enter the Gungeon is a well-designed twin-stick bullet hell. Its style is immaculate, and its combat is engaging. However, each run ends with me saying, well, that was pretty fun, before shutting the game off and going about the rest of my day. People often talk about that one more run mentality that roguelikes give them, and I just for the longest time couldn't understand that. I found these games enjoyable. I still load up games like Ocho or Enter the Gungeon and give them a run every once in a while. But I never have a desire to grind them or anything. Even a game like Elden Ring Night Rain should have been an obvious one for me, as I love Soulsborne games. However, I found myself bouncing off that one too. It was enough of a sample size at the time for me to just declare, yeah, I just don't love roguelikes. I can appreciate their gameplay, but the idea of starting from scratch with little to no story to speak of didn't really appeal to me at all. And yes, I still need to play Hades, but hey man, leave me alone. I have other really important things to do with my time. What do you mean I could have played less Smite?
Not even a dustbuster could fix this mess.
Uh-oh. Oh my god! I feel on top of the fucking world! Come here, bitch! Oh, dude.
Are you seriously going to tell me it wasn't worth rewatching all of Breaking Bad for the 7th time? What do you mean over 100 hours of BTD6 is diabolical? If anything, it's diabolically low for how peak that game is. What Risk of Rain 2 did was play on my love of synergies from Grim Dawn, but it took me a while to realize that it was actually a similar feeling that I was enjoying in both games. Whereas Grim Dawn achieves synergistic joy through careful planning and build crafting on part of the player, Risk of 2 does it by going gambling. The basic gameplay of Risk of Rain 2, again for my parents who know somewhere between fuck and all of what a roguelike is that you select a character and drop into a level. Various monsters will spawn in, and killing them provides gold that can be used to open chests that will drop a random item. These items can be white, green, red, orange, purple, or blue. White are common items that usually have a pretty simple effect, such as Soldier's Syringe that adds a flat 15% attack speed, or a Sticky Grenade that will add a 5% chance to attach an explosive to enemies that will do extra damage. They all aren't that simple, such as like hiker's boots or something, but they are the most common item you will collect in any given run. Green items are usually a little more specialized and often a decent power bump. Red items are the highest tier that can completely change the trajectory of a run. Orange are active items that can be used on command, but you can only hold one of these at a time. Purple items are corrupted versions of various items. Picking up one of these will corrupt all of the versions of the item you are carrying and corrupt any versions you pick up in the future. And they're pretty similar, but they're usually different. Blue are often strange and come with both positives and negatives. I only ever collect these on specific instances. Or when my friend Cameron likes picking up glowing meteorite and fucking up all our runs by getting us killed by meteors. That's really fun. It is by the slow accumulation of items that you become stronger, and as each level progresses, the enemies get tougher and more numerous. You need to stack as many items as quickly as possible to stay ahead of the curve. The ideal run of Risk of Rain 2 is when you can get so far ahead of the curve that the entire flow of combat breaks down and levels are cleared in mere moments in what is referred to by players as a god run. Things at this point become wildly empowering, as you typically have so much movement capacity and damage output that even the strongest enemies and bosses simply crumble under the weight of you. It is wildly fun to take bosses like Mithrix and Voidling that when faced on a proper curve of power are challenging as all hell and trivialize them by being so strong. They are still extremely fun to fight on that single run when you have enough items to fight them with some level of confidence too, as they implement many exciting and fear-inducing mechanics. The thing that makes it roguelike is that when you die or come out victorious, you lose everything and have to start over from stage 1 on your next run. This is the framework I mistakenly disregarded as something not for me when I came away from other roguelike games I mentioned earlier. The truth of the matter is, I just don't care much to improve my skills at a twin-stick bullet hell game. And my favorite aspect of Soulsborne games are not their combat, but rather the rich, evocative settings and the mythical storytelling. The point of a roguelike is to give you an excuse to keep replaying a gameplay loop that you've already been enjoying. Saying I didn't love roguelikes was wrong, because what I actually wasn't falling in love with was the core gameplay of those other titles. It's like saying I didn't like Jersey Mike's subs or something, when the whole time I had been ordering the ones with capicola on them. And I don't like capicola very much. Enter the Gungeon has a wide assortment of weapons and passive items available on each run, but at their core they enhance the base gameplay of a twin-stick bullet hell game. The items and weapons are a bit like using magic in a Souls game. They make the game easier to beat, or at least add variety to choose from, but you can load in with just the base loadout and beat the game through raw skill alone. Risk of Rain 2 is not exactly like that. Risk of Rain 2 technically is a third-person shooter, but it's not focused on that because the core gameplay is so reliant on the accumulation of items that the power progression from slow to weak to fast and strong is much more representative of what the enjoyable part is than just recommending it to somebody who's a fan of third-person shooters. Having to start from scratch each run gets a total reset to the power progression, allowing that gameplay loop of incrementally gaining strength to repeat endlessly and quickly. Where planning out a build in Grim Dawn and playing it into endgame will take hours, tens of hours if you're not speed leveling, Risk of Rain 2 can quickly repeat that same power progression multiple times in one afternoon. There isn't as much satisfaction in the actual construction of a build in Risk of Rain since the items are random, for the most part, But the gambling aspect of opening a chest and not knowing what you're going to get out of it is still exciting. There is also the excitement of finding some strong item printer where you can stack the same item a ton of times as long as you're willing to give up other items of that same rarity. Grim Dawn was more about the low and slow progression with more intentionality behind it. Risk of Rain 2 is more immediate, and it can make the player feel there is no limit to the power they possess. I truly fell in love with Risk of Rain 2 in a way I didn't know was possible. Just like Grim Dawn before it, both games are just incredible in the way that they both stack small advantages to create a power fantasy that is hard to replicate in other games. They take different roads to get there, but they evoke a shockingly similar feeling to me when I play them. There has also been a newcomer to the party that again has reshaped my understanding of my tastes. A wild hodgepodge of game design that culminates in a new favorite of mine. Witchfire is a game currently in early access, but it has wowed me with its quality. Witchfire is part extraction shooter, part roguelike, and part build-based RPG. Now, I don't really like extraction shooters. Granted, I've only ever really played Hunt Showdown, but that is often considered one of the better ones in the community. There are many reasons I don't enjoy Hunt Showdown all that much, but it mostly boils down to it being a multiplayer game. Fun fact about me, I fucking suck at online games now. Other than the occasional good game of CS2, I might as well be using tilt controls when I try to aim at people. This stems from a lack of time and effort poured into these competitive shooters over the years. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have a fiance, a job, and other various life responsibilities. I could still be good at one of these games in spite of those, but that would occupy everything else in my day. All my free time would have to be dedicated to CS2. I don't really want to give up all my time to watch movies, or play CRPGs, or go out to see my family members in order to get good at a competitive shooter. In all honesty, I just derive little satisfaction in the competitive aspect of games anymore. I explore that in other avenues like watching football or that's it. So I more so just tag along in these types of games at the behest of my friends. That's why my favorite gun in CS2 is the XM, because I don't take this shit seriously.
Whoa.
It just mauling me off.
Walk through it.
Walk through it.
Oh, this XM gameplay!
Bro.
You dead?
With that defuse.
Nice.
So while I will admit that Hunt Showdown is a fantastic game with industry-leading audio design and combat and vibes that I find compelling, most of my matches end with me being gunned down by someone who clearly has put more stock into honing their skills to maximize their enjoyment. I understand that perspective. These competitive games are really fun. If I had the time to put into them, I would. And when you take them seriously and actually put in that work to get good, it's really fun.
Yeah, this is the expensive one.
Dude, I am so good at the video game. What the fuck?
Yeah,
I thought I was gonna, dude. I thought this was gonna be a fucking shitter night because I'm kind of drunk. But holy shit, I'm so good, dude.
It just kind of sucks that I don't have the time or desire to put in those hours anymore. Hunt Showdown has tense gunfights similar to my time with Apex Legends, but they also share a lot of time spent running around for positioning and looting. The downtime to tension-filled combat ratio just doesn't do it for me. So, once my friends stop asking to play Hunt Showdown, I stop playing it entirely. Witchfire solves one of my biggest problems with Hunt Showdown. There are no other players to worry about. A single-player extraction shooter is something that I was skeptical of at first, but turned out to be a jam when combined with a roguelike system on each expedition, as well as a broader progression system that keeps me engaged in leveling up gear to unlock new capabilities and build synergies. Yeah, Witchfire has some great synergistic potential and had me back on my bullshit immediately. At the Hermitorium, the home base for the Witch Hunter, you can equip a wide variety of weapons, rings, relics, and more to make a build that can dish out a ton of damage. What makes this exciting to play around with is how each item evolves over time and becomes stronger and more versatile. For example, one of my favorite weapons is the Hunger hand cannon. At the start, this is just a simple 6-shot revolver. If you haven't been able to tell yet, this game takes heavy inspiration from Destiny in the way its weapons feel to use. Hunger is no different to any of the rainbow smorgasbord of hand cannons from that game, or at least in my limited experience it isn't. Yet when you get enough kills with Hunger, it evolves to enhance bullets after a reload for every headshot. This is denoted by the blue cross found on each loaded bullet rather than the standard red. Then it can evolve again, and the more empowered shots you have, the more damage each shot will output. Then on the third and final evolution, the first shot will freeze a target if you have a fully empowered weapon upon reload. This 3-act structure happens on every primary weapon, every piece of jewelry, every spell. Each new Mysterium revealed creates a new opportunity to pair it with some other advantage provided by another piece of gear. For example, one of my favorite pairings in the game is the Hangfire and Dynamo Ring. The Hangfire is another hand cannon that when fully upgraded has each shot stick to enemies. Once you activate the weapon's reload, all bullets that have been shot will explode and deal extra damage and light enemies on fire, making them vulnerable. The explosions will also do more damage if you hit multiple enemies before reloading. Then if you dash before reloading, 2 things will happen. First, the Dynamo Ring will activate and send a lightning bolt of damage to the last enemy shot. This lightning bolt also has a chance to jump to other enemies as well. Then, if you have a fully charged focus by dealing a certain amount of damage without being damaged yourself, a soul sigil will appear around the enemy. Traditionally, if you dash then shoot these soul sigils, it will stun enemies. With the Hangfire though, you won't need to shoot the actual sigil. As soon as they appear after the dash, you hit the reload on your Hangfire, and all of the bullets that you shot will explode and take the soul sigils with them. Now, you've shot them, applied shock damage, lit them on fire, making them more vulnerable, and stun them. This combo can do sufficient damage and crowd control on its own, and then when you add even more weapons and powerful spells like Blight Cyst to apply damage over time to a large group, things can get out of hand really quickly. You will find that you need all this damage though, as the game can get very hard as you progress through each level and more hostile enemies start to show up. As well as progressing along the Gnosis difficulty curve, where each jump up in Gnosis level increases your options for builds but adds extra enemies and stronger enemies to the levels available to you. Then you can add in the Torment system, which will add additional difficulty modifiers to specific levels and ask you to clear all 7 manifestations. Making a build that can withstand the torments or can push deeper into Witch Mountain, where the portal to find the final boss is going to be located, is a lot of fun, especially with a set of weapons and other items that you have been leveling up through gameplay for the last few hours. Witchfire is not on the same level of build crafting as Grim Dawn, but makes up for it by introducing the progression system of online shooters by locking weapon upgrades behind getting kills with said weapon. Imagine like getting camos in Call of Duty, but instead of having to get slide kills on a Tuesday while it's raining, in order to get a camo called like Orca or something that is literally just like black and white, you get weapons that evolve off kills and activation of their unique abilities, becoming more appealing as tactical options in the process. The game also pairs this with a roguelike system that makes each expedition different. Granted, there are only so many of these arcana that can appear, and by late game you should have prophecies to lower the RNG and get more stuff you might actually like, but they can still reshape a run depending on which ones roll as options for you to pick from. These can be kind of basic, like weapons partially reloading on kills, or just having elite and ascended enemies drop more Witchfire, the game's currency. Yet they can also do things like enhance elemental attacks in a multitude of ways, or allow buffs if certain requirements are met. Again, these roguelike elements pale in comparison to what is offered in Risk of Rain 2, but it is the combining of the roguelike temporary progression, broader RPG progression, exciting combat, and the desire to extract that gives Witchfire a strong presence and makes it great. I may have done pretty much all there is to do on the game at this point in early access, but the content has netted me at least 50 hours of game time, and with more on the way in the future, I'm sure I will return and get that number even higher. One of the simple facts of life that I've kind of had to learn over the years is that you don't like stuff until you do. I thought I was mostly interested in either competitive shooters or narrative-focused games. But after a while, I started to fall out of love with competing, as it tended to put some unnecessary strain on my friendships, where you're arguing about who was at fault for the loss and that kind of shit. I used to take these competitive games way too fucking seriously, and when I finally took a step back and looked at them from afar, it was clear that they really didn't matter to me that much. Then I thought that maybe I'm only into gaming for the narrative aspect, but Grim Dawn came around and glued me to a screen caring about numbers and optimal point distribution. I thought I didn't like roguelikes, but that was just not true. Risk of Rain 2 has proved that over and over again. I was sure that extraction shooters were just not for me, but Witchfire has convinced me that what I wasn't enjoying was the actual people in those games, as I didn't want to put in the same effort level in order to compete with them. One little decision leads to another, and over the past few years I've discovered that many genres in gaming, music, and movies that I had previously written off were actually sick as hell. Self-discovery is one of the most gratifying things you can do for yourself. So keep trying to play games, keep listening to new songs and watching movies and genres you haven't quite gotten a grasp on yet. Eventually, you might find a gateway that opens you up to a flood of things you can't seem to let go of. Hey guys, welcome to the post-amble. I don't know, I used to write in the bottom of my descriptions this kind of stuff, but thought maybe it'd be more accessible and more people would actually see it if I put it at the end of the video. Well, it's been a crazy start to the year. I got an original Xbox and we're going to war in the Middle East, so it's kind of like the early 2000s all over again. But in all seriousness, like January was actually a pretty rough month for me. I lost my dog who had just turned 15 in late January, and then like not even a week went by before I ended up losing a friend. He didn't die, but you know how it is. But I mean, not everything's bad. You know, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. That was stressful, but we won, so it's okay. I'm getting married next month in May, so that's exciting. And then, yeah, finally work has kind of slowed down, and I'm not like killing myself every day to get my job done. So I've got a little bit more energy, a little bit more time. So I was like, I kind of want to go back to making videos, because I know other than like the Halo video that I yapped and basically complained for 30 minutes about Halo Campaign Evolved, I do think about this all the time, like this video stuff, even though it's been like 3 years since my last like proper video. So I thought, fuck it, like let's just make this shit. So I had this script written like 3 months ago, and I just threw this together over the last like couple days. So apologies if the editing is weird and the voiceover is weird and all that kind of stuff, just because I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm trying to get over that idea of just needing to be like ready to do stuff and to just do it. And like, you're never going to learn if you don't actually just like put your foot in the ground and take a stand for it. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to just work through that. And yeah, so I hope to be back with another video sometime, maybe later this month, maybe in in May, but I don't know. We'll see. All right. Love you guys. Bye-bye.